Excel is used by everybody in the organization, from the sweeper till the CEO. Well, maybe not the sweeper, but definitely the CEO. And if you hold that top position in your company, let me tell you the key Excel skills that you would need to excel at your job. Not just hard Excel skills, but a couple of behavioral skills as well to get the job done in Excel. When you're asking for any kind of analysis to be done, the most fundamental thing that you need to learn is how to make a prototype or some sample or a blueprint of what you're asking for. And that actually involves 4 key things to be done. The very first thing that you need to understand is listing down the KPIs or the calculations. So let's just say that you're asking for any kind of sales reports or cost report, whatever report that might be, you need to list down what you want to see in that report. And by listing down what you want to see, I don't mean to say dashboards and reports and charts. I mean to say the bare fundamental KPIs. For example, these fundamental KPIs could be, what is my total sales? What is my profit? What is my cost? What are the average order value? What are the refunds? Is there any cost of acquisition of the customer? So you simply, on a piece of pen and paper, just list down all the possible calculations that you need. That is part number 1. Once you list down all the calculations and the KPIs that you need, next to that, you're going to write down the broad logic of calculating them. So for example, let's just say that you're trying to calculate total sales. And you as the CEO of the company understand that total sales I would calculate not on the maximum retail price, but maybe on a discounted selling price. So you will write down a bare fundamental calculation on a piece of paper where you will say that, hey, why don't you multiply the discounted selling price into the ordered quantity. If you want to further adjust to that, you're going to say that, hey, from the ordered quantity, you're also going to subtract any kind of refunds that we've had. So number of units refunded is also going to be subtracted. And therefore, taking these two numbers, which is the selling price, discounted selling price, multiplied by the net ordered quantity is going to give me the total sales. And similarly, you're going to do that for every single KPI so that anybody taking a look at that has the understanding of the broad logic that needs to be deployed in order to do the calculations for these metrics. The next very, very important thing is that you're almost always never going to take a look at the metrics in isolation. You would not just take a look at total sales as a number, or let's say average order value as a number. You would obviously have some slicers, some filters put to that so that you are taking a look at it by the region, by the country, by the channel, and things like that. The next best thing to do is that you define how would you like to slice these calculations. So against every single metric that you have laid down and the logic, the third column of that little table that you're making is going to be what are the key slicers or filters that you need to be able to slice that calculation. Now, once you have made this simple 3-columnar back of the envelope kind of table, which is where you have 3 columns, the list of calculations, their broad logic of calculation, and what slicers do you need, the fourth thing that is going to put all of that into perspective is some kind of basic visualizations that you need to see it through. Now, here is the mistake that most people make. When I talk about visualizations, people start, imagining fancy charts and visualizations and cards and things like that. Now, of course, all of that is good, but if you don't know how to organize all of the data, the most fundamental thing that you have to put together is a simple table through which you want to take a look at the data. And that is also what I highly recommend if you're trying to get the work done very, very fast. So on a piece of paper, just draw down the kind of table that you need. You would have something in the rows, something in the columns, and that's all that you need. On the top, you can perhaps maybe have some filters that you would like to apply to your calculations, and you are good to go. The other very, very important thing that you would need is the ability to ask why. And by why, I mean to say a drill down. So for example, if you're taking a look at growth over last year for any particular sales calculation, maybe by the regions, and you see that a certain region is dropping as compared to the last year's sales. Now, you obviously have this question as to why. You obviously have to tell your subordinates that for these kind of tables, I would need a further drill down. A drill down in a pivot table would simply mean a plus sign. That means you want to take a look at more understanding of the cities or any other factors or any other slicers which are going to give you more perspective of why certain thing happened or why the dip happened in the sales. So the first one here is a simple table of listing down all the metrics that you need. These are just simple tables. And the second one here is that from certain tables, you might want to drill down further. Now that is a very, very good blueprint for anybody to get started with, where you have listed down the KPIs, you've listed down the logic of those KPIs, you've also mentioned the slicers that you need, and you've also ballparked some kind of visual sense that bring me this kind of table where the numbers are fed in, and these are the kind of drill downs that I want to see beyond those tables as well. And that is the document that you hand it over to your subordinate to start working on that report in Excel. And that's how you make a good ask of what you need. Part number 2 of the work is going to be read, understand, and audit. Now, this is where some technical skills come into play. The kind of work that you're going to get from your subordinates are broadly going to be 2 different types of works. One is going to be forecasting the future. So you might have asked that, what does the future look like? What does my budgets look like? Forecast the sales for the next 5 years or so. And that is nothing but the kind of work which comes under the section of financial modeling. You're trying to project the future. The other kind of work could be analyzing your historical data. So whatever sales have happened in the last month, last quarter, last year, last couple of years, you want to analyze all of that and you want to take a look at how the trends have been happening in the sales data or whatever the data that might be. Now, both of these kind of tasks can be done in Excel, and obviously they are going to have couple of formulas, pivot tables, all plugged together to build that spreadsheet out for you. One of the most important things that you need to have in Excel is that you need to be able to read, understand, and most importantly, audit the work that is coming onto your table. So there are some very specific audit related Excel skills that I'd like to speak about. Let's just take a look at a particular spreadsheet that I'm working with in the context of future projections of a model. Let's just say that you asked your analyst to build a financial model, and this is the financial model that we've got. The exact understanding of the financial model is not important. Now, let's just say that you're trying to evaluate this particular line of calculation, which is depreciation. And you want to find out that how is this number 80.4 is calculated. What you can do is you can use the evaluation key called F9. So if you just go over to the formula right here, press the F2 key to open up the formula. Now what you can do is that you can select the entire formula right here, which is the sum formula from the starting bracket till the end of the closing bracket. You can do that. And you can see 2 things. The first one is that as soon as you select the formula, it actually shows you what the evaluation of the formula leads to right up on the top of the formula, which is 80.43. But if you also happen to press the F9 key, which I'm not doing it at the moment because my recording is going to stop, but if you also press the F9 key, this sum function is going to be cancelled away and you are going to see that very number. But please ensure that you don't press enter, because otherwise that number is going to be hard coded. Press Ctrl Z to restate the formula and then you can press enter. So that's my first trick. In case you want to understand what the formula is doing, the F9 key is a brilliant way of going about it. The second very interesting trick that is going to be super helpful in auditing purposes is the go to key. Let me show you how that works. So let's just say that here in the formula, you can see that we have some EPC Depreciation Companies Act kind of a cell name created right here, but I actually want to go to that cell. That could be in a different sheet, by the way, but I want to go to that cell. So I can actually select the name. This could also be a sheet reference. You could actually select that and use the F5 key to open up the go to box and then click on OK. And then you're actually going to go to that cell that was named as the certain number, and you are right here as well. And if you actually press escape, you are going to come back to the original formula once again. So using the F5 key as the go-to key is an excellent way to trace where the inputs are coming from. The other very interesting thing to take a look at in your models or any projection calculations is cell references and finding out that which other cells are affected by the current formula. So for example, I want to know that is this calculation 80.4, is that going to any other cell or not, right? So how do I do that? I'm actually going to select that particular cell right here, and I'm actually going to go over in the formulas tab, and in the formulas tab, I'm going to say that I want to trace dependence. Now there also happens to be a shortcut for this, which is Alt T, U, and D, and if you press that particular shortcuts, you're actually going to maybe trace all the dependent values of the cell. So this cell is actually going to the next cell, and this cell is actually going to the next cell, so on and so forth. It's also going right here, and it is also going right all the way up till the bottom, which is somewhere right here as well. That's where the depreciation is going. So it's a fantastic way to understand where your formulas are leading. Now, if you take a look at the same cell, I can also turn this off. So I can just go back to the formulas and I can say that I want to remove the arrows. what I can also do is I can also trace the precedence. That means I want to find out that which cells are leading up to this particular cell's calculation. So trace precedence, and I can know that this particular cell is actually coming up from all of these cells, this cell, and maybe a few cells up on the top as well. The next super helpful thing is nothing but formula evaluation step by step, which is nothing but formula evaluation tool in Excel. Take a look at how this works. So let's just say this is a gigantic formula. It's not too bad at the moment, it's very small, but let's just say that you're working with a gigantic formula and you want to understand step by step at every single step how that formula is evaluated. You can just pick up the cell and go to the formulas tab and actually open up the evaluate formula right here. I click on that, and this is going to open up the formula evaluation box. Now here, once you actually click on evaluate, you're going to see that every single item is then evaluated. You can also click on step in case this is a further formula. It's going to step inside of that and show you the formula right here. You can click on step out to come back, and every single stage of evaluation is shown you right here, and it leads you to the answer that how did you get to that 80.4 calculation, which is super helpful. Okay, quick interruption in the video. I have started a new consulting business. It's not a new business, but then I have formed a new company, which is where we are taking consulting projects on Excel and on Power BI. If you have a need to get a project done, up and running, I will highly recommend that you take a look at our consulting page and do reach out to us in case you have any project for us. Thanks. Let's just get back to the video. The next thing that you're going to need is the understanding of how can you do ad hoc analysis of your own. No matter how much care and attention your analyst has put into your work, but then you're obviously going to ask more questions that are not going to be immediately available to you. So the ability of performing ad hoc analysis, something that you needed right away on your own, is going to be a great win. Let me actually talk about some very critical analysis pieces that you can actually do it in Excel using some simple pivot tables. So we have a couple of columns right here. We have the date, year, sales rep, customer, sales, and region. And maybe I want to do some my own analysis right here. I asked for the data, I got the data, and I want to do some of my own analysis. How do I do that? Now, the fastest and the simplest way of summarizing data in Excel is nothing but a pivot table. And I'm going to show you 5 basic tricks in pivot table that are going to open up a lot of doors for you. Right. So I'm going to maybe select this particular pivot table right here. I'm going to go over to the insert tab and create a pivot table, perhaps on the new worksheet right here. I make a pivot table on the new worksheet and my pivot table looks something like this. Now, the very first thing that you need to understand while you're working in a pivot table is that what kind of summarization do you want? So let's just say that I'm trying to find out the sales trend and I want to find out that how is my sales trending every single year. That's what I want to find out. Now, this could be done in 2 ways. You could probably take a look at the data where the sales are in rows. So the first year, 2005, 6, 7, and 8, 4 different rows of data. And then next to that, there could be sales and you can then see the trend. The other way of doing the same thing is that your years could be in columns. So 2005, 6, 7, and 8. And then underneath that could be the sales numbers of that. Now, these are just 2 different representations of the data. It doesn't matter. However, it is going to matter when you actually create a pivot table. So if you actually take a look at my pivot table, the blank pivot table that I've created, in here, if I wanted to have the first kind of layout, which is where the years were in the rows, then I need to take the year and put that in the rows section. And you can see that we have years flowing downwards. And against that, I can just drop in my sales value and I get something like that. However, if I wanted to have the second kind of layout, then in that scenario, I would have to take the years from here and put that in the column section. And I would have the second type of layout, which is where the years are right here and the sales is against this way. So the order of the layout is going to present that how you're going to take a look at the data. The second thing that pivot tables offer plenty of summarization options. So at the moment, if you take a look at my current pivot table, I can take a look at the sales. But perhaps I also want to take a look at transactions for every single year. How many transactions happened in every single year, which is nothing but the count of rows that were there in 2005, 6, 7, and 8. How do we do that? Well, if you actually right click on the field or the column that we have dragged in the value section of the pivot table, this offers a couple of standard default calculations, something like this. So I happen to right click right here. I can say that this is going to be summarize the values, and you have all of these standard calculations right here. You want to take a look at the count, an average, a min, a max, and a product. Perhaps I want to take a look at the count, so I can just go ahead and change the standard from a sum to a count, and therefore I now know that here we have 101 transaction, 179 transaction. The transactions have been rising, but here in this year we have a little less number of transactions, maybe half of that of 2007. The other very common calculation that a lot of senior people need are contributions. So let's just say that we're trying to build a pivot table, and in the pivot table we want to slice by the year and we want to slice by the region. So we have a year right here, and I can see the years right here. And under every single year, I want to take a look at the region. So I can just maybe take my region, put that in the rows section. And you can see that now we have not only the year, but also the region. And I can take a look at the sales of every single region. At the moment, I don't see the total of the year. So I can just go ahead up in the design tab. And I can say that I would like to have the subtotals at the bottom of the group. And therefore now I have the subtotals as well. Now, one calculation that a lot of people are going to ask for is what is the contribution of all the regions in the year. So whatever sales that we have it right here, every individual region when divided by the total sales, what does it contribute in the entire sales? How do we do such a calculation? It's dead simple in a pivot table. So what you can do is you can take the sales amount and put that in the values section one more time. Well, the default summarization is sum, and sure enough, it is going to give you the total once again. But hey, this time we don't need the total once again. We just need to take the contribution, like take that sum and divide it by the total right here. How do you say such a thing in a pivot table? Ridiculously simple. So I'm going to right click right here, and I'm going to say that I want the show the values as whatever values, that means the sum. I want to show it as a percentage of the parent total. So show the values as and a percentage of the parent total. Now when I say parent, for every single region, the parent is going to be the year. That's what I mean. So the parent happens to be the year, and I can click on OK, and that is nothing but the contribution. So you can just relabel that as contribution, and we are good to go. The next very, very common thing that a lot of people need while doing ad hoc analysis is the ability to slice and dice the data. Perhaps you don't want to take a look at the contribution and sales for the entire organization. You want to only take a look at for certain customers. So what you can do in a pivot table while doing your ad hoc analysis is nothing but a slicer. Slicer simply means a fancy looking filter. So I can right click on the customer and I can say that I'd like to add a slicer, means a filter, and it just adds a more visual looking button styled slicer right here. If you happen to click on any value of the slicer, you're just going to filter down the values to just that customer. Now at the moment, Goodfly customer in the year of 2005 gave us about $100,000 of sales. This is the regional contribution for every single region on that 100,000. The next thing that a lot of people would need is ability to present the data in some sort of chart, right? So that's where pivot charts are fantastic. So let's just say that I want to build a chart from this particular data, and the fastest and the easiest way to build a chart right from the pivot table itself is nothing but using the shortcut Alt F1, and you get a chart like that. Now obviously this chart is kind of clumsy, it's kind of dirty, not very presentable. So we can do some things to make this chart a little more presentable. So you can see that I don't need to see all of these buttons right here, and I can turn them off. So click on the chart, go to the Analyze tab up on the top, and you can just turn off the field buttons and the chart starts to look slightly better. These two field names can be at the bottom, so I can just click on the fields, just do the format by pressing Ctrl+1, and I can push them at the bottom. And I can also add the labels. Right click and add the labels, and the labels are added. In case you want to remove whatever axis you have it right here, I can click on the axis and just remove it. I can also remove the grid lines, and we are good to go. Now this chart that you see at the moment is going to be dynamic. That means tomorrow if you want to change it for any other customer, sure enough the chart is going to respect the pivot table. It's going to fetch the data from the pivot table, and you can see the chart updating right here. If you're a seasoned senior executive, then you obviously might know a lot of things that I already talked about, but oftentimes you're going to come into peculiar scenarios where you don't know a way to get to the answer, but you obviously know the logic and the business understanding of that. Let me just present you one simple example and how can we use artificial intelligence in ChatGPT to get to what we want. So take a look at the sales table, the same sales table that we've just seen. We have a couple of columns right here, and we also have one additional table, which is nothing but our expenses table. In the expenses table, we have two columns, year and the total expense incurred in that entire year. Now, somehow, what I want to do is I want to allocate this particular $16,000 of expense to every single row right here. Now, the question is, how are you going to allocate? Are you going to give it equally in all the rows? Is there going to be some ratio? So the logic of this particular calculation is that I want to find out the total sales of the entire year. So if I just maybe take the sum of all the values of 2005, I'm going to get a number. And then when I divide every single value by that number, I'm going to get a ratio. And in that ratio of the total sales of the entire year, I will divide that $16,000. Now, perhaps you know the understanding of the business case, but you don't know how to pull that off. Now, the best way to do that is to break the calculation or break the logic down into multiple parts. Solve it part by part with ChatGPT, and you are going to be amazed at the results that you get. Let's just start with the basics first. So to be able to do this calculation, the allocation calculation, we need three numbers. We need the numerator, which is the sales right here. We need the denominator, which is going to be the sales of the entire year. And then we need the multiplication of the ratio with that particular value. We don't know any of that, but we just understand the logic. So let's just go ahead and start to calculate the denominator, which is the sales for the entire year. So if I just maybe act naive, and if I apply a filter right here, and I can say that, hey, let's just filter for 2005, click on OK and say, okay, I want to take a total of all of these values. So take a total of all of these values, and I have this particular number, 1247,500 right here. That is the number that I want to write right here against all of these cells. Now, one option could be that I write that number manually, but then that's not going to solve the purpose, because in case the data changes, that number will not update automatically. So I need some sort of formula that can actually do that calculation. But for now, I don't know how to do that. I want to find it out using ChatGPT. So I'm here in ChatGPT, and I'm going to write a very, very simple prompt. And my prompt is going to look something like this. I have a sales table with the following columns, which has date, year, sales rep, customer, sales, and the region, the names of the columns. And I would like to add a new column to this table to find yearly sales. What should be the Excel formula for that? Let's just see what ChatGPT comes up with. So I just send that to ChatGPT. It just does something, and this is kind of good to go. Now, let me just go ahead and copy this formula. So I'm just going to maybe go ahead and Control C on that formula. Now here it is saying as the explanation that the name of the table is sales. We can check that. And the year column is containing all the values. That's the name of the year column. At year means the current row and things like that. But hey, let's just copy the formula and try to implement that. So I'm just going to maybe copy the formula, and I'll come back to my Excel, and this is where I will write my yearly sales column right here. Let's just add a column in between and one more, and let's just go dump that particular formula right here. Now at the moment, the SUMIFS sales is not really the kind of table that I'd like to kind of have, because I want to sum only the sales column, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to give me a wrong result. So I'm just going to say that this is giving me a wrong result. Can you revise the formula? This is not working. Can you please check the formula again? All right, so here it says that in the sales, we are supposed to write the range of the cells. The year is going to be again the range of the cells, and then the A2 is actually the year. So this is fine. So I can just go ahead and copy this particular formula. I can then go ahead and dump that formula right here. And now I'm just going to start to make changes in that particular formula. So I know that this was the range where the sales numbers are, and here are all the sales numbers. I can just select that. And at the moment, I have applied a filter for 2005. Let me just actually remove that filter. So I'll clear the filters, and then I will write my sales. And the sales is going to be nothing but this particular column. Press enter. And then I'm going to say that my year is going to be nothing but the year column. So I can just go ahead and write the year column, which is right here. And then the value of the year is going to be nothing but the current year, which is this value right here, which is nothing but A2, but I can just get rid of that at the moment. Press enter, and we get some number here. Let's just increase the width of the cell, and we do get the right number. Now, if I happen to open up the filter, you're going to see that we obviously have four numbers. All of these four numbers are the sales for every single year, and I can apply the filters, and I can definitely validate that as well. Now, we've received the first thing. The second thing that we want is the allocation calculation. What is the percentage allocation? And I believe that is very simple. So I'm just going to maybe say allocation, and that is nothing but take your numerator divided by the total, which is yearly sales, press enter, and we get the allocation of that. Sure enough, that can be a percentage, and I obviously know the shortcut Control-Shift-5, and this actually converts this into a percentage. Now, once you actually have this in a percentage sign, what we can do is we now have to take this allocation percentage, and this is the allocation percentage that needs to be multiplied with the value of 2005, the entire yearly expense, which is nothing but $16,000. So I need a way to be able to get $16,000 in across all of these cells. Let's just see how can we do that again using ChatGPT. So I've written a very simple prompt right here. I said that I have another table with two columns, year and the expense amount. How do I get the expense amount for every year in my current table. Let's just send this to ChatGPT and let's just take a look at what we get. So it says that we could use a VLOOKUP or an XLOOKUP. It suggests a VLOOKUP. Sure enough, why can't we do that? So I'm just going to maybe copy this particular formula, go back to my Excel and just maybe dump the formula right here, and let's just make this formula work. So it says VLOOKUP for the year, which is this particular value. So let's just go select that particular value. I'm just going to pick up that particular value. And then it says, hey, just maybe select the range of the expense table. So I can just maybe go ahead and pick up the range of the expense table, which is right here. Column number 2, which is this particular column, and false. Press enter and we do get the expenses right. This is majestic. This is my expense. And then finally, I can come up with a very simple expense allocated calculation. So expense allocated, and that is going to be nothing but take the expense, multiply that with the allocation, and therefore we have the entire allocation. Now, if you happen to filter for 2005, for all the values of 2005, the expenses should total up to $16,000 because that's just a simple allocation. And you can check that if that matches what we have done through ChatGPT is absolutely correct. So this ability of breaking down the problem into much smaller parts is going to be essential for you to solve problems using ChatGPT, especially the problems which are ad hoc and you do not know the answers to. After you've gone through the 3 stages of ask, audit, and maybe performing ad hoc analysis, I'm assuming that you end up taking a decision or any kind of action that you want to take a look at the data. Now, at this stage, you might want to close your work and maybe go back home. But one thing that you're missing at this stage is that you have to teach why you took a certain action or why you performed the ad hoc analysis to your subordinates for their learning as well. So let's just say that I'll give you a business example. Let's just say that you were trying to analyze sales and the sales were going down, and you maybe as an ad hoc analysis tried to figure out that how many representatives were there at the particular store on that particular day. Now, this understanding of why were you taking a look at the attendance of the number of people present in the store would be completely alien to your subordinate because he would not think in terms of systems. And only if you tell the person that attendance in the store is absolutely essential to driving sales in the store, and that's why you took a look at attendance data, is absolutely critical learning for that person to give you more closer to what you need when he or she does the analysis the next time. And as you progress through several decision-making processes and you kind of ask the ad hoc analysis, it's absolutely critical for you to teach all of that decision-making process to your subordinates. And once they understand that how you're making decisions, what kind of metrics are you asking for, their work is going to get closer and closer and closer to what you actually need. I hope you found this video helpful. If you need help with your projects, please reach out to us.